Ooh, that almost got squirrely for a second there, because I had the video pulled up on the other side, and so the audio was playing through, and you probably got a little bit of echo there. Hey, what's going on, guys? Hey, look, I left the counter up. It's been that kind of a week. No, I didn't. I could swear I took the counter down yesterday. Anywho, how we doing, guys? All right. So, this morning, I've got this article, and good God. Oh, flipping Democrats. Rod says he's being mean. You got to check his temp later. I see one of the Steves is with us this morning. Yeah, I think we're up to 4 Steves now. I'm gonna have to think of funny names for the other 2, because we've got proper Steve, other Steve, and probably gonna come up with a couple more. Maybe one of them will just have to be Steve too when he introduces himself. You know, hey Steve, I'm Steve. Oh, I'm Steve too. Oh, yeah, yes, you are. You are now. So before I dig into the article, I want to just review some basic principles of economics. If you want more of something, you subsidize it. If you want less of something, you tax it. For example, if the thing you're interested in is more indigent welfare recipients and state-supported broodmares who are going to continue to vote Democrat indefinitely because you pay them to do so, then you go out of your way to make sure that government money is being used to guarantee that outcome. You know, like extended unemployment benefits and more moratoriums on evictions that these knuckleheads think somehow they're gonna go a year without paying rent, and that's just going to be a year that they didn't pay rent for. Newsflash, kiddos, if you didn't pay rent for a year, when all this is done, you're going to owe a year of rent, probably with interest, right? So. Which is a double pain in the ass, because guess what? All that rent money was paid out of tax dollars. Or, no, let me back up. All that rent money was paid out of borrowed federal funds because the tax burden that we already bear was not adequate to cover the cost of the subsidization against that rent, where some landlords, not most, but some larger landlords were subsidized by the government to help them get through not having the rent payments coming in when they were supposed to. So those guys are going to be screwed. And that's the plan. That's the objective. Right? You know, the Republicans are the mean old party of the evil rich white man. And the Democrats, well, they're for the little guy. The Democrats, they're for the poor. So the expectation in the mind of the average American citizen is that rich old white guys vote Republican and everybody else should vote Democrat. So naturally, it's in the interest of the Republican Party that everybody be richer. And it's in the interest of the Democrat Party that everybody be poorer. If you want more of something, like poverty, you institute something like LBJ's Great Society War on Poverty, which has cost the American government and the American taxpayer, via the American taxpayer, nearly the entire sum total of the national debt since its inception. Now, in fairness, that number, there's a little bit of gap in that number now, because after Trump made the mistake of doing the COVID stimulus packages, maybe the first one was a good idea, maybe, but even that's just about. I have a hard time even defending Donald Trump on that one, but. The third and fourth, and now the monthly continuous that's going on. If y'all aren't tracking, they're paying out every month on the 15th to a lot of people now. And that's insane. Right? That's absolutely insane. I mean, many of us who were paying attention had to actually file paperwork to not be burdened with additional stimulus pay, because guess what, guys? That's coming out of your tax return next year, which is a whole nother problem. So if you want more of something, you subsidize it. You hear the far lefties crying about oil subsidies and the like. Well, yeah, because we want more oil. It makes sense to subsidize something like oil to a point. You know, don't get me wrong. If I had my way, we would abolish all taxes, and the government would only be able to raise money directly through tariffs, as it's outlined in the Constitution, and then I'd make the government get a damn job. If the government wasn't producing a good or service for which people were willing and interested in paying voluntarily for the acquisition of that good or service, then the government doesn't have value and should be abolished. So, if you want less of something, for example, freedom, liberty, life, prosperity, you know, or the pursuit of happiness. You know, if you want to have less of something like, let's say, for example, a libertarian space cowboy revolution that threatens to upturn the balance of power among the nasty amphibious priapistic elites, well then, you tax it. So that's another Democrat thing, right? I just went through a pretty good explanation of why the Democrat is interested in subsidizing poverty. They're so interested in making sure that there are more poor people that are going to vote based on the government handout. You know, they want to make your vote the only commodity that you have to sell, so that you can't afford to make a reasonable, responsible decision. So, subsidize poverty and then tax income. If you want to make sure that there just aren't any more rich people, you want to make sure that the average citizen can't become rich people, tax income. Right off the top, let's just go ahead and say, hey, what do you make? Yeah, we're going to need about half. And half is a conservative estimate. Okay, you're out somewhere in the neighborhood of 30%, you know, ballpark, depending on the level of your position in the progressive sliding tax scale. And that's before you even think about how how much are you paying in sales taxes, right? How much is the cost of commodities and services that you purchase increased by the tax burden levied against the corporations that are providing you with those valuable products and services, right? You know, keep in mind, even before you pay sales tax on purchasing an item or a service, the price of that item already includes tax as part of that price that the company has to pay on selling you that product to begin with. If you stop and think about the taxes you pay, it's insane. More than half of the money you earn and spend, right? You get a little bit of break in savings sometimes. If you hold on to it, then you don't get taxed on using it. But if you earn money and you're responsible and you save money, you will be punished for using that money, right? So even if you do the right things and you manage to reasonably and lawfully avoid paying taxes by not spending all the money you earn, so that you're not being taxed on every dollar that you spend beyond the taxes that you already paid for the privilege. Please, sir, may I petition the Crown for permission to trade my life and time away for a pittance at which I should be taxed to the Crown? Please, sir. Thank you, mistress. May I have another? Right? So, even if you've been responsible and saved money, you will be punished for trying to use that money in any way. So if you've managed to save $100,000, even before the Biden administration managed to get their teeth into really and intentionally ramping up inflation to guarantee that your dollar is worth less than it was even a year ago, right? Let alone before the Obama administration, right? A dollar today is worth less than half of what a dollar was worth before 9/11. You can buy less than half of the things with it, right? So even before half of your wealth is stolen by being reduced in value through inflation, as soon as you try to use any of that money, you will be punished for it with a fine called taxation. For the crime of sustaining your life, having your liberty, and pursuing happiness. Case in point. Oh, freaking Democrats. Now someone wants to slap a space tax on Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk et al. And there's going to be a lot of people that look at that headline and they say, well, these guys are billionaires, man. Bezos has the first $1 trillion company, man. Well, actually, no, shit up your nose, asswipe. Okay, I can say a lot of things about Jeff Bezos. Don't like the guy. Mostly because he's a liberal, he's a Democrat. And I'm going to speak a very full-throated defense of both of these gentlemen and the Bronson guy as well, in reference to this article and what this Democrat is proposing. But there's a lot you could say about Jeff Bezos that's very negative. Now, on the front end, Bezos started a company in his garage, and it exploded. It was a brilliant idea. He took it even further than the original brilliant idea. But he's a lefty. So what you're seeing is he managed to climb his way to the top admirably. But then he wants to pull the ladder up behind himself. Lot of criticism to be heaped on there. And then of course he bought I forget which paper he bought. I think it was Washington Post, but I'm not sure about that. But he bought one of the big lefty rags and made it, a leftier rag. He basically bought a newspaper so that he could use that media apparatus as his own personal political propaganda machine. And that's not speculation or analysis. That's based on his statements, right? That's based specifically on his actions and statements. I don't have to do a deep dive on that and make assumptions based on the evidence available. The evidence available is that's what he said, right? It would be equivalent in a murder trial to saying, yeah, well, we couldn't find a body or a gun, but Billy Bob hadn't been seen in 3 years, and Joe Schmucky here says he killed him, so we'll go with that, right? Now, Elon, okay. Elon made a lot of his money trading on government subsidies. I gotta say, the subsidies are out there, and if you can leverage them that way, there is a fine line between there's a point at which adhering to a moral code makes you a sucker. And I really, really, it is a truism that galls me mercilessly, right? If the enemy is using a tactic that you find morally reprehensible, And the only alternative to your extinction is to use an equally reprehensible tactic. It becomes morally reprehensible to embrace your extinction in service of that morality. Because once you have been exterminated, you no longer have a morality to sacrifice yourself to. Now, so the thing that's happening with Bezos and Elon and all those guys, they're engaged in private enterprise and exploration, right? On the face of it right now, it kind of looks like you got some guys that got their hands on too much money and free time and decided, hey, I just want to get outside the atmosphere for a minute. But space programs, just like, before we had the concept of going to space, the mere need to leave the cave and hunt the mammoth, right? That very basic level of exploration. I know the cave is safe, but there's mammoth out there and I'm hungry. Right? And I got to figure out a way to take that mammoth out. And the last time I had to bite that son of a bitch. And that hair is thick. It's hard work. Hey, this pointy stick kind of looks like one of my sharp teeth. I wonder if this will be easier. And I've invented the spear. Exploration is the necessity who is the mother of all invention. Exploration is how we grow. Exploration is how we make that cave bigger. Right? If I've got a tiny little cop in the middle of, just out in the middle of sector in the shit and downrange, and I could push out, bring in some more HESCO barriers and build that cop up. I clear out the insurgents around my secure position. I can expand my security perimeter, and all of a sudden I've gone from a cop to a fob. Gone from a company outpost to a forward operating base, right? And that's how you eventually end up with a Kandahar NATO airfield, for example. Exploration, expansion, right? And let's not forget, a lot of these same lefties that are up in arms about these billionaires having fun, running space programs, and engaging in real research and development, real science and exploration, which is already yielding important technological advances, useful technological advances, the kind of technological advances that dramatically improve all the lives on the planet, right? Technological advances that do things like develop new methods of using existing fuel options, develop new alternative fuels, develop that whole green living thing. Anybody who's arguing against the space exploration activity and is also, and this is going to be most of them, guys, the people that are arguing against the space exploration stuff, they're the same people who are the climate alarmists that honestly believe that anthropogenic climate change is an existential threat against which we can take meaningful precautions if we just increase your taxes to 90%. Right? If you want less people, tax them. And that is a major concern for these climate alarmists. They are concerned that global population will explode and become unsustainable. It's not going to happen. Right? We're going to cap out around 9 or 10 billion, and there will be a pandemic, or there will be a food shortage, or there will be a mass war, right? The conflict increases the more people you put in and around each other. So the more people in the tighter proximity, this is one of the many reasons that your cities are absolute cesspools of crime and pain and danger, because they are infected by proximity. You get enough people together close enough, and some of them are going to disagree about something. You increase that by a significant magnitude, and all of a sudden, you're talking about mass casualty events erupting from moderate land disputes. So the population problem will take care of itself, but these same climate alarmists that have said every 10 years for the past 70 years that the world is going to end in 10 years because either we're going into a new ice age, or the polar ice caps are going to melt, or the next things, this and that. They keep bouncing back and forth on that, and they all have one thing in common: they are consistently and entirely wrong. Right? The 10-year window passes, and their science is proved to not just be wrong, but in most cases to have been actually, verifiably, provably falsified, fraudulent science from the beginning. I mean, fraud, guys, fraud. Fraud's basic. Let me be very clear on what I'm saying here. Climate alarmism, it's not that it should be considered. No. Climate alarmism shouldn't be considered a crime. Climate alarmism is a crime, is a criminal activity just based on the laws that exist today, because it's perpetrated through fraud, which is evidenced and clear. Now, that's not even saying that there's nothing to the science of climate change, that it's not, I'm not making the claim that there's no such thing as climate change. Obviously there is. But the terrorist activist industry of climate alarmism is built entirely on fraud. Fraud which was conducted for the explicit and obvious purpose of leveraging government funds, of increasing taxes to steal money, right? Because they're terrified of among other things in the climate alarmist propaganda equation, they're concerned about population. And what did I say? What was I just saying a minute ago? If you want less of something, you tax it. I mean, it's not complicated. The baby killers want less people, right? The baby killers want less people, and so they will tax you. They will tax people out of existence, literally. And here, because they're terrified of the libertarian space cowboy movement, I have to give a shout out to Larry Correia and Jane Cobb, Adam Baldwin of the... So Larry Correia wrote this fantastic series of short stories called Tom Stranger, Interdimensional Insurance Agent, and in every decent one of the other dimensions, Adam Baldwin is the President of the United States of America, because Firefly had 5 very good, successful seasons and a blockbuster hit trilogy, instead of being canceled at the end, in the middle of its first season, like it was in this nutjob reality. And so the libertarian space cowboy revolution saved us from the madness of Joseph Robinette Biden. Y'all need to go find those short stories by Larry Correia. Tom Stranger, Interdimensional Insurance Agent. You're in strange hands with Tom Stranger. Fantastic. And they're all voiced by Adam Baldwin. Go check those out. Anyway, so the recent suborbital flights by Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic and Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin were praised by some and condemned by others. Okay, in fairness, fair criticism to Jeff Bezos. Jeff, buddy, your spaceship looked like a big dick. Okay, it's one thing to say that, spaceships, rockets, ballistics, whatever, projectiles generally have a sort of phallic appearance. But, I mean, guys, Bezos, and I mean, okay, first I want you to look at Bezos. Just look at this guy. Oh, error 111. Ooh, that's a different one. Okay, so, I mean, the man looks like Dr. Evil, right? And you remember the Johnson, I hope you all remember the Johnson gag from Austin Powers. Dr. Evil launches his rocket, and then it's just a montage of people pointing to the sky and saying, look, there's a giant, and then it cuts before they can make the phallic reference to somebody else saying it in a different context. And it's a hilarious scene. And Jeff Bezos' rocket, okay. Generally phallic shape rocket, granted. But this is the thing that Bezos went to space in. They sell these at Starship, Bezos. I mean, come on, Jeff. You should have had solid fuel tanks that looked like testicles hanging off of this monstrosity. Come on, man. Did you hire a design team? So, anywho, as we're looking at this, this is the beginning of the libertarian space cowboy movement. But Democrat Rep Earl Blumenauer, and okay, this is one of those that just gets my goat, and I know I'm sidetracking, but they use the word Democratic Rep. Okay. In the wake of extraordinary and inignorable amphibious priapism, we know there's nothing democratic, nor ever has there been, about the Democrat Party. He is not a Democratic rep. He is a Democrat rep. Let's be very clear about that. There's nothing democratic in this shitburger. So Democrat Rep Earl Blumenauer wants to slap a tax on space tourism flights. Hey, we just spotted some more money and we want to steal it. Now, let's be clear. Space tourism flights. So, what we're talking about is passage tickets. Is there any world in which you think that people who were going to be buying space fare, right, buying a ticket to ride on space flights for purposes of tourism, is there any world in which you don't think that ticket was already going to have a sales tax on it? Right? So what he's talking about here is adding an additional tax onto above and beyond the sales tax that was already going to be charged. And let's not forget, these are private organizations, private executions. The laboratories, the research and development facilities, the construction facilities, the employees engaged in that research, development, construction, production, consultation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the properties involved, all that's already being taxed. And it's being taxed dramatically and illicitly. Right? So it's this simple. Democrats hate happiness, liberty, and most importantly, life. Now, that said, I may have lost my spot. I was going to close on another piece there. The tax. So, little perspective, little additional perspective on the constitutional position here. Taxes, other than maybe sales taxes, are absolutely unconstitutional. prior to the amendment of the Constitution to create the IRS, all taxes in the U.S. were unconstitutional. The government was only allowed to collect revenue through tariffs and certain types of liens, right? Liens and levies, right? So the government would only be allowed to place tariffs on trade goods, import and export. Import. And criminal fines, for example, would have fallen under levies, possibly. The sales tax, once the Constitution was amended to create the IRS, there could be an argument made that having amended the Constitution, the creation of the IRS for the purpose of enforcing sales tax law was reasonable. However, the Constitution, and I forget, is it the 20? Damn. The amendment that created the. Anyway, I'll have to remind myself later. It's one of the later ones. We're talking 1913, Monster Jekyll Island, birth of the IRS, all that. Anyway, having amended the Constitution to create the IRS and taxes generally, one could make an argument that the people voted to create and establish what we now come to understand as a sales tax. That amendment, however, did not repeal the Fourth Amendment. And so it is unconstitutional still, even with an amended Constitution in its current form, for you to have your papers, person, and property violated by an unreasonable search and seizure without a duly sworn warrant, given the investigation on reasonable suspicion of your having committed a crime. It is a violation of your Fourth Amendment protection, your Fourth Amendment rights to be secure in your person, property, and paper, that an income tax or a property tax even exists. I'm for a smaller and smaller government every day. Right? It's not complicated. I look at the government that we have, and it does nothing of value. Now, I would make the argument that its only legitimate function is through the military to secure the borders, and that is an activity that has to be funded, right? But like I said earlier, the government needs to get a job. It needs to get a damn job. But with the wokeism that's infecting our military today, the military is rapidly losing its own legitimacy as a function of government, because it's been infected with the cancer of Marxism, with the multiple cancers of Marxism, feminism, and black supremacy. Right? Anti-white ethno-supremacism is a cancer that has infected this entire nation and our military. So, I mean, full minarchism, guys. I would abolish as much of the government as is possible, as fast as humanly possible. It has become intolerable. So, thanks for watching today, guys. I will, y'all be safe out there. I love you. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you tomorrow.